Hello, everybody. Welcome. 2024. I'm Sam Laprade, and we're back with the Capacity Building Institute webinar series. I'll let everybody come into the webinar and get comfortable. Maybe you've got a cup of hot tea there or something. It's snowing and a little bit watery here. It's got some freezing rain in Ottawa. I hope you're getting some good weather where you are. Lots of participants coming in, so we'll let everybody load in. One of my favorite things to do is to see where everybody's coming in, so feel free to throw that in the chat and let me know where you're coming from today. As I've mentioned, I'm in Ottawa, and of course it's a little bit of that typical winter weather today. Lots to talk about today. Leadership. Where are we starting? Lots of great content today for you. Two of my favorites are joining us off the top today, so I'm excited about that. Coldwater, Ontario. I felt that when you said Coldwater. Coldwater, Ontario, from beautiful Winnipeg as well. Julie and Kelly, thanks so much for being here. I don't want to miss 1 minute of what we're going to talk about today, so I'm going to hand it right over to my good friend, Nick. Nick, how are you?
Good, good. How are you?
Is it too late to say happy 2024? Have I missed that window?
Absolutely not. I
Okay,
think it just
perfect.
feels late in the month, but
Yeah, there you
still
go. It's
January.
our first webinar of 2024. We're kicking it off. Nick's going to lead us through some of the great information from the Capacity Building Institute. He does a great job. Then when we come back, I'm going to be joined by two of my favorites, as I promised. Kristina and Barb will be here. Over to you, my friend.
Hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Nicholas Kuchemi, as Sam so gratefully introduced me, and I am a Sustainable Development Engagement Intern for CBI. CBI is a nonprofit organization dedicated to providing training, coaching, and mentorship support to staff and volunteers in the environmental nonprofit sector across Canada. We are a member of Sustainable Capacity Solutions collection of 5 nonprofits who are each committed to addressing a unique capacity building needs of these small ENGOs. Now, CBI's mission in particular is to provide equal opportunity and access to capacity building training for every small shop nonprofit environmental leader across Canada. Now, this comes in the form of essential training coaching for these leaders through expert courses and programs catered to various positions and responsibilities in the nonprofit sector. We focus on 6 core areas of capacity building as seen in the slide. The goal is to equip them with the skills needed to lead their organizations effectively and make a lasting impact. Now, CBI facilitates a number of programs like these webinars. And it's important to note that they are now held on the 4th Wednesday of every month. So if you're watching this as a recording, you may have missed it because you weren't here on the 4th Wednesday. In addition, we also brought seasoned leaders together with environmental nonprofits in the Ottawa area through our Engaging Senior Leaders in the Canadian Environmental Sector program. Now, this program matches people with over 20 years of experience with organizations in need of board members. We have a couple of leaders still interested in finding that organization that's just right for them. So contact us at communications@capacitybuilding.ca if you want to be matched with a potential board member. Our intern training program is delivered in partnership with Eco Internships. It's designed to support youth who are starting their careers in the ENGO sector. You can check out their website at ecointernships.ca and apply now. Now, we have also officially opened up our Capacity Building Certificate program for 2024. The CBCP is a hands-on capacity building bootcamp for environmental leaders focused on key areas to help your nonprofit thrive. With this, you can ensure you have the practical tools, knowledge, and skills you need for successful nonprofit management. It's delivered by experts who are also passionate about environmental work. The CBCP is delivered virtually, offering a combination of teaching materials, live group training, one-on-one coaching, and a chance to connect with like-minded people. You can check out the program at capacitybuilding.ca/CBCP. Now, as usual, we have an amazing group of lead trainers. Of course, Sam, always with us, Rob Barnes, Barb King and Alex Keenan. We're also fortunate to have Barb King with us here today. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank all our sponsors and funders, including the Ottawa Community Foundation, the Sustainable Capacity Foundation, and the City of Ottawa. Without their help, none of this would be possible. Now, as a reminder, we encourage you to reach out to us with any questions or insights you might have, or if you just want to learn more. As I said before, we're looking for people in leadership roles in environmental nonprofits who want to join our capacity building certificate program. Now, keep in mind that our next webinar will be on February 28th, 2024 from 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. And that will be on the topic of networking and partnerships. Be sure to sign up to our newsletter and stay up to date on the next webinar and more at capacitybuilding.ca. Thank you all for being here, and I'll leave you all to enjoy the webinar.
Thanks so much, Nick. Great job as always. I've got my calendar circled for every single one of these dates leading into 2024. I don't want to miss any one of them. Thanks so much to all the people joining us from across the country. Vancouver's here. My good friend Susan from Ottawa's here. Some Winnipeg, more Winnipeg, which is great. Edmonton, which is great to see everybody across the country. If you haven't had a chance yet, feel free to pop in the chat. Tell us where you're coming from. It's going to be wonderful today to spend time with two of these wonderful women who I respect so much in this sector. And it's, of course, the wonderful Kristina Inrig. Kristina, where are you? There you are.
Hello.
I love what's behind you, because when I think about you, I think about the words collaborate, contribute, connect, and that's what you've got it right above you there.
There's a lot more there, but yes.
Oh, wow. There you go. There you go. All those words come to mind when I think about you. Wonderful to have you here, Kristina. And you've invited a good friend, of course, Barb King. How are you, Barb?
I'm good. How are you?
There
Thanks
you
for
are.
having me.
Oh, it's wonderful to have you here. Today's all about leadership. And I love that we're kicking off the year talking about what we can do to kind of get aligned for a very busy year ahead. There's no two ways about it. When it comes to leadership, there are hundreds of books at the at the bookstore. There's lots of opportunities to learn about leadership. But I think when you're in those positions and you've learned some of those lessons the hard way, those are the ones that stay with you, right, Kristina?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like what you said off the top about, is it too early to say Happy New, or too late to say Happy New Year? I think that's exactly the theme today, is to be thinking about, it's a fresh year. What can we do in terms of our leadership, in terms of supporting organizations, and how do we, kickstart our year in leadership roles or in developing ourselves as leaders?
Yeah, for sure. Barb, when you think about sort of a fresh year, I kind of cheat a little bit. I use January and September. I give myself a little boost in September to get me through those last months. But I'm always thinking in January, what processes can I put in place? What can I do to make the year a little bit better? How can I work more effectively, smarter, work smarter? Is that on your mind, Barb?
Yeah, definitely. One of them will be making sure I'm 10 minutes ahead of the webinar. So when Zoom changes it to require a new account, then
Right.
I can make sure that's done.
Oh, good.
But all kidding aside, kind of reflecting, on my past work, like when we work in the nonprofit sector, we are just moving and moving and moving from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, and things are happening so fast that, the year is over, we have Christmas, and we start fundraising and looking at kind of the year ahead. But I think, it's so important before we really get into things, the summer season coming up and work plans and whatnot, just to take a step back with your team and look back on the past year's accomplishments, and, to really celebrate and kind of look at, what worked really well, what did we accomplish, and, also looking at some things, that maybe didn't work so well, so that you can kind of make adjustments. Coming especially out of COVID, the last, 3 years, in terms of the fundraising game, and, fighting for money, and just sort of trying to, keep your programs going. I think there was a lot of burnout, and just checking in with your staff and kind of making sure that, you have the right resources, you have enough people, they're well supported, and that people can kind of look and get excited about the new year ahead.
Yeah, no, brilliant. And I just want to pick up on word you used. You used the word celebrate. And I'm going to ask Kristina, are we shy to celebrate in this sector? Does it feel odd to celebrate? I love celebrating whether a big gift comes in or, something happens or we've hit a certain target. But I find some reluctance in this sector to celebrate.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because when I was the executive director at Sustainable Ontario, where I was for 10 years, one of our 4 core themes was celebrate, because I exactly thought that. I felt that we were not, taking enough time to really celebrate, take time for ourselves and celebrate ourselves in this work, but also celebrate the accomplishments. And, I think what Barb has said around the last couple of years being challenging is very true. And something that came to my mind when you were saying that, Barb, was just, I don't know what it is, and I'm a funder now, working with a foundation. But the last 2 years, both in December and in early January, there have been all these deadlines for applications, most of them from the federal government, frankly. And just a note out there to those of you who are kind of busy not being able to take a proper break over the holidays. A lot of people I've talked to are feeling a bit burnt out, and it's partly because they're scrambling to get all this stuff done right over the holidays. So I'm just going to say, I sympathize out there with you guys who have gone through that. I know some of my team have been in that position, but a note to funders, like, we should stop putting funding deadlines like right around the holidays if we want people to be able to take a proper break. It's like, I understand they're trying to push things off their agenda and just get it out the door, but it doesn't do us any favors to have a January 5th deadline. How do you think people's holidays are going to be? So I know that veered off totally away from celebration, but it took away from our ability to celebrate.
Exactly.
So many
I was thinking,
people we're scrambling, and so
Yeah.
when do we get our breaks if that's happening over the holidays? So anyway,
We're gonna have to have February, Christmas in February, Christmas break in February. That'll be the new
for sure.
thing.
I think it's a really valid point, because I think often these decisions aren't made around people, they're made around calendars and not the lives of people. So brilliant to bring that up. Barb, when you think about leadership and you think 20 years ago, if you could sort of tell Barb King 20 years ago what leadership rule would be number 1 for you, what would it be?
Yeah, I've definitely learned from my mistakes over the last 20 years. But I think, leading from behind and really focusing on your team and building them up. And, as a leader, you're only successful if your team is successful. So, I learned a lot about just sort of, swallowing my pride sometimes, making mistakes and, being okay with, not being the one that has all the answers and whatnot. So I think, when you become a really good leader is when you put others first, especially in your team, and you can, kind of support them from the background and really start to see them shine. So
Yeah, servant leadership comes to mind when you're talking about all of that. And Kristina, like, when you think about the year ahead and what you want to accomplish as a leader, is it hard for you to sort of say, okay, we may not be able to do it all? Is that hard to sort of even think about the year? Because I think I even think about people going through strategic planning, and sometimes they come out with this beautiful strategic plan, and then the staff are kind of going, we're never going to be able to do that. But leadership is like, oh, we're going to do all that. So it's those balancing all of that.
Yeah, I think it used to be hard for me to say, let's slow down. And because as long as you know me, Sam, I've always been running around like crazy. But in the last few years, I've really realized that sometimes, you really do need to slow down or step things back to be able to grow them better. And so I've been challenging myself and challenging our team to say that as we plan into this year, like. And it's funny you mentioned strat plans, because I look back on a couple of strat plans we did in 2020, 2021, 2022. Of course, no one could have predicted the pandemic and all of what happened there, but most of us are not where we thought we would be as organizations compared to what we thought we would do when we got into maybe a 5-year strat plan. And maybe others are way ahead, and that's wonderful. But I know for me, we've had to take a bit of a reality check on what we can bring in terms of funding, partnerships, what kind of collaborations, what kind of deliverable numbers. So I think, being honest with ourselves about where we are and being okay with it not being maybe what we set out to be a few years ago. That's the first step, like, is taking a close look at that. And then and then being okay with kind of like taking a pause or taking a reality check. And so I've even said to my team, like, if we need to downsize a couple of the programs to be numbers that are more achievable and not always pushing ourselves so that we're not burning out constantly, that's part of the process too for decision making.
For sure. I've said it time and time again, you know, the reward for anybody that raises $1 million is next year they get to raise 1,000,001. And so I know that sounds kind of funny, and I know that people need to raise money. I get all of that, but you always, I think the realization of boards that you're starting at zero all the time can put a lot of pressure on groups. And you know, I'm working with a client right now who they're down about 8% from last year, but the realization of how many people they brought back and how many people that they, you know, that they were able to sort of cultivate during that time should be celebrated. But often we just think about, oh, it's the loss of 8%. And the gain of $920,000 is kind of lost because you're focusing so much on the loss. Barb, how do you sort of manage? I mean, I'm speaking about a fundraising example, but how do you manage when things maybe are, you know, don't hit the target and you're still able to try and motivate and keep up the morale of your team?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to pivot all the time. Like if you look at businesses, you know, how many of them don't succeed on the, you know, the first model that you try. So I think it's, you know, an acceptance of, you know, having the ability to accept that you're not always going to get it right. And sometimes, you know, growth might not be financial growth, but it might be growth in strategic things like, you know, we're just going to get our stuff together here. We don't have clear policies and procedures, and we're growing way too fast and we're going to fall apart, you know, in a year if we take on any more work. So sometimes it's a pause and just looking at, you know, internal, you know, capacity. So I think that should be celebrated as part of growth, and we shouldn't always be looking at, you know, the bottom line and have we expanded this program. You know, we took, you know, one of our programs paused when I was at Watersheds Canada for a couple of years, and we just stayed stagnant, you know, through COVID of like, we're just gonna stay where we are. We had big plans to take, you know, things Canada wide, but, you know, you have to shift, and that was okay. And then, you know, now's a good time and they're moving things forward. But
yeah, I mean, we're here as part of the Capacity Building Institute. So I think what Barb is saying is really important. The fact is that capacity building is a huge need for all of our organizations, and we need to make that a significant goal to enhance. And that should be something we're measuring just as important as the number of people we reach or the number of workshops we put on. Like, I don't think we're giving the capacity, the internal capacity of our organizations enough credit or celebration when we focus on it. And frankly, that's a message that I think the Capacity Building Institute wants to share across the country for environmental nonprofits. We need to spend more time on capacity building. And it's never like you check it off your list and it's done. That's the challenge with capacity building, because you're always having board members turn over, you're always having staff members change. So capacity building is a lifelong learning journey for your whole organization. And that's the mindset we all need to be in when we go into a fresh year and as we continue throughout the year.
Brilliant.
And that's part of risk management as well, you know, ensuring that you've got all the checks and balances in place. So, you know, definitely critical.
Lots to unpack there for sure. I don't know if it's just, I'm going to be 53 next week. So I don't know if it's part of that, but I find I've said this phrase to myself for the last number of months, that the time has become my currency. And I'm really valuing time. And I bought this book. I'll just share it, 4,000 Weeks Time Management for Mortals. And so I'm diving into this one because I'm really looking for sort of those opportunities to, and I shared a little bit earlier, like work smarter. Is that something, Kristina, that's top of mind for you about time and managing? I know how hard you both work, but is that something, Kristina, that you also have top of mind for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is thinking about what tools are going to be most effective with your teams, and that you have a shared language and a shared set of tools that you're using. So, for example, today, looking at spreadsheets when it comes to our fundraising goals or, you know, things like that, having a shared tool that we're all using together. What's always helped me is when I was an executive director of an environmental group, I was doing that for about 16 years among different organizations. And I I think I learned in like year 5 or 6 to set up a really good deliverables chart. That in the first couple of years was just kind of off, you know, on the side, and then became a Google Doc, and then became a shared tool with a whole bunch of people. So having those kinds of tools that are tracking your progress so that you really kind of know at a moment where you are. I think that's really a way to work smarter in terms of what you're saying, like having tools that, and then making sure that if you're having a tool that you're using it together as a team, but that you're updating it consistently so that you can always log in and know where you are. That goes for anything from grant deliverables to fundraising to organizational goals, what's in your strat plan. It's not the be all and end all, but there's not one exact solution, but whatever you can do to kind of create common tools that are effective is one way that can help you, you know, work smarter.
I've used 2 with a team. I've used something called Monday, and I've used something called ClickUp as tools as well. Barb, what other sort of tools are you using? How do you work with tools at hand?
Yeah, one of my favorites actually is, and because we're, you know, nonprofit, we have the Gmail, you know, account and all the tools that they have. So I really got quite good at kind of using them. And one that I think not many people know about, and I showed it with the team just the other day, actually, was in the calendar invites, taking the minutes right in. So if you go into Google, you can actually take the meeting minutes that are attached to your calendar and then shared in a Google Doc, you know, things like that. And it's fantastic because it's always there. And if you're like, oh crap, what did we talk about in the meeting? So I'll open that up. It automatically loads their emails, names, who's there because they're part of the meeting. Then you click in action items, then you can check off your action items as you go. So, you know, that's one of my favorites. So anyways, that's one I'd encourage you to check out, because then you can email that list again and shoot the minutes off, and it's attached right in the calendar. But that and the task list, I love having tasks. There's something really exciting about checking it off.
I know. Okay, can I admit something that I cannot believe? Okay, vulnerable. So I have put something on the list that I have already done, so I can strike that sucker off. Like,
okay, I'm guilty of that too.
Me too.
Yeah. So that makes me feel better. Okay, 3 for 3 on that one. But yeah, I mean, exactly the same way. I think what you just mentioned about I had no idea, Barb, that existed. So yay, Barb.
I don't think many people do. So yeah. It's
brilliant. Let me ask you a little bit about this. And we talked in December. I thought it was a very impactful conversation with the wonderful Amanda Rushlow, good friend of mine, great colleague for many, many years. We talked about compassion fatigue, and I thought it was an excellent discussion. She's so brilliant. But how do you manage all that? I mean, I'm thinking about mental health a lot in January. A lot of people struggle in January. How do you balance that compassion fatigue, Kristina, with the tasks at hand and keep checking things off that big list?
I think it's important that we don't spend the whole year feeling overwhelmed and feeling that everything is an emergency. And so, you know, we talk a lot about this in funding circles about getting away from that language around everything is an emergency. But I think it's equally important in the nonprofit sector that we have that thinking. So from a funder point of view, it's the idea that we shouldn't be making demands on our grantees that are making them feel like everything they have to respond to is in the sense of an emergency. And in the same way, we need to think about that in terms of our team and our deliverables. So I think taking stock on that kind of like, are we operating at a frantic level already? And it's only the beginning of the year, right? Is that happening? Is it happening in a frantic kind of way, or are we able to kind of pace ourselves out? Because we have 12 months of this year, and then the next year starts right away after. So there's never a time where we stop, especially if over the holidays you spent your holidays grant writing,
right?
Then you need to make sure that your every day is sustainable, and we can only do so much in a day. And we can, if maybe having that list is what really helps. But I know for me, like prioritizing, and you can sometimes feel overwhelmed by all the things there are to do. Like, I want to do big things. I'm excited about changing the world, bringing capacity building all over. Like, I'm excited, and then sometimes my excitement turns to being overwhelmed because there's just so much to do, so many people to talk to. When Oprah said I'm meeting my life away, I think about that a lot because I do feel like I can fill my whole week with just meeting after meeting after meeting. And while it's fun to talk to new people and learn about their stuff and this and that, it's also like it can be too much. It can be too many meetings, and then there's not time to sit there and do your work and actually like take a moment to think and write and reflect. So yeah, I don't know that I have an answer. I just think that, you know, that's something we have to be aware of, like where it's already now almost the end of January. So if we're kickstarting the new year, where is our energy level and where are we in terms of like the sense of urgency? Because, you know, there's a lot of people who talk about like grinding it out and pushing really hard and working like crazy. And I actually think that that can be the opposite sort of feeling that you should be having. Like you don't want to be stagnant and like bored and not, you know, lifting a finger at your job either, but you also need to have a balance where your level and, you know, your nourishment inside is coming from your vocation. And if you're starting to lose that energy level, you know, we have to look around at the things around us that are affecting it.
For sure. And many times, Barb, people are, you know, in leadership roles, working with boards. That can be a challenging role sometimes. It can be challenging to have, you know, whether it be 6, 12, 15 people around a table that are looking to you as kind of the head of an organization to get things done, and balancing what their goals are with what you know you have the capacity to do. Is there any advice you have for us in working with boards and keeping yourself I'm just going to say it, sane, keeping yourself
Yeah.
sane through the whole thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, for sure. I mean, I think I was pretty lucky in the boards that, you know, I had, where I had really great board members. Obviously we had challenges over the years, but you know, the one kind of bit of advice that I always share is to really get to know your board members on an individual level, especially when they're new on the board, because they're going to want to impress, they're going to want to, you know, have something to say at board meetings, so they may ask more questions or ask for more deliverables. You know, having that kind of in person, you know, whatever possible, one-on-one, and get to know them, you know, as people. And, you know, I think it makes a huge difference, so that they can be compassionate towards you when you've got a lot going on. You can be honest. You know, I was always extremely honest, like, you know, in terms of, I'm a little burnt out. We have all these proposals, you know, I'll do my best, you know, and just having those kind of open, good relationship. So if you're a board, you should be able to eat together, laugh together, you know, and also have serious conversations and deal with conflict and come out the other end. So you really want to make sure you have that cohesive relationship, not only between board members, but, you know, staff and board. So we'd also invite our staff members to attend board meetings and get to know them and whatnot. And, you know, we all became friends, you know, to some degree, you know, where we care about each other. And I think that's really critical.
I understand that. You know, I think about all the opportunities I've had for leadership roles, and you know, the ones that I think I'm most proud of are ones where I saw somebody else come up behind and either take that role if I moved on from it, or you know, had an opportunity to see somebody, or I bump into someone at the mall and they're like, you know, Sam, you hired me, and I was the first time I ever got hired at fundraising, and now I'm the director here, or whatever. Those are some of my most rewarding moments. Kristina, talk a little bit about some of those for you, and how we can bring people along the journey.
Yeah, I mean, I think something I think a lot more about these days is around equity, diversity, and inclusion. And I know we've had some conversations on that on these calls, and I believe we're having a few more coming up in the coming months. And so when I look at leadership opportunities in the environmental sector and still see that it's a very white-driven sector, I think that's where programs like the BIPOC Fellowship that are about bringing BIPOC leaders into the forefront in terms of running organizations and taking on different roles. I've had the incredible opportunity to work with some amazing BIPOC fellows now over the last couple of years, and just to see what opportunities and accomplishments are out there. So I feel really blessed to be able to be part of that, and also to recognize you know, that there is a need to transition in philanthropy and in the nonprofit sector around these areas. And it's not about leveling the playing field. It's about making sure that people can get on the field all together and
Mhm.
giving them encouraging a chance, because that to me is like part of what the future holds in terms of these kinds of changes.
Yeah, absolutely. Beautifully said. I had mentioned a resource. I've got lots of books back here that certainly I've relied on over the years. Barb, is there anything you want to share with us that is kind of on your nightstand in terms of something you reflect back on book wise that or resource wise that would be a good suggestion for everyone joining us today?
It's an old one, but it's still my favorite is, getting into some of the Simon Sinek. It's all about why. And, it just kind of really helps me kind of get back to the root of, why I'm doing the work that I'm doing and, how we communicate, in a way like the work, so when I'm coaching or, working with different team members, that's one of my go-to and one of my favorites, but.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Kristina?
Yeah, there's so many books. I love to read anything by John Maxwell, who has some incredible leadership books out there. I also really thought Good to Great was a great book to really kickstart some of my ideas in the last 10 years and to think them through. But I think the important thing is that we're always trying to read and trying to advance our own skills as leaders and try to learn from others out there. I think that has to be part of our ongoing process as leaders, that we're continuing to learn, continuing to go to conferences, continue to go to webinars like this, and just to share what we're learning, but also to learn from others.
Absolutely. We're going to have a few minutes for everyone else to ask some great questions. So don't hesitate to start thinking about those and popping them in the Q&A there at the bottom of or on my screen. It's the bottom, but might be somewhere else for you. But that Q&A area there would be a great place for you to pop those in. I've got certainly lots of questions for them. We could talk all day, I think, you two.
I know.
But
I was going to say an hour is going to go by so fast.
I know, so fast with the three of us. But I popped in the web chat just Simon Sinek, and I put Good to Great in there. But I just captured those two quickly. But certainly, I'm happy to share more resources as well with people. But Barb, when you think about it, and of course, Kristina brought up diversity, equity, inclusion. It's really become such an important part, and it should have been all along, to be honest, a big part of our work. But how do you ensure that you're able to kind of keep that in the forefront all the time?
Yeah, I think, having opportunities for staff, to learn more, to connect, some of the programs like the BIPOC Fellowship, getting involved with that, and just giving opportunities to, different people to participate, hiring opportunities, internships. I think it's all really powerful, especially the collaboration and opportunities for us to learn from each other and collaborate. So it's really exciting, working with the BIPOC fellows that Kristina is involved with. And I love the work that they're doing. They now have, fellowship circles where they meet and they learn from each other and they can share and, just engage, especially in the environmental sector, in that we're working in. So
Wonderful. I just want to note as well, Hannah has thrown the link into the compassion fatigue seminar or webinar, I should say, that we did with Amanda back in December, and it really was quite a compelling time with her. So I encourage anybody to copy and paste that. And if you haven't seen that or you weren't able to join us in December, I know December is quite a busy month.
Yeah, in fact, I think all of our webinars are up on our YouTube channel. So anybody wants to look back, we've had some incredible guest speakers over the last couple of years. So really encourage folks who are looking for a specific topic or just want to catch up on the learning. It's a great place to do it. For
sure. When I think about all of the, successes that I've had, it's not very, very long before I start thinking about things that I've done wrong and moments that I want back. And I find the moments that I want back or where I've made an error or I'm unsure, I am blessed to have this incredible network, whether it be through, the Association of Fundraising Professionals or whether it be a group like Capacity Building Institute. But to really surround myself with somebody that I could call and say, I got to tell you, I'm putting this letter out and it doesn't feel right. Can you read it for me? Kristina, you are like the queen of this. So you've done a beautiful job of creating all of these relationships and then connecting other people in so they have people they can call. How important has it been for you in your career to have others you can lean on?
Yeah, I mean, I would say Barb is one of those people for me. When we met, I think it's been over 10 years now, both working in environmental organizations, both in senior roles and building in our capacity as executive directors in the environmental sector. I feel like you have to have people like that you can be totally honest with and just like go offline and be able to say, I can't believe this happened at a board meeting, or I can't believe I did this wrote this in a letter and this and that. So I do think that those kinds of peer meetings are so important. You can still get there virtually. Although I found it was harder during the pandemic when you're meeting someone for the first time over the screen, to build that really strong connection. But it is starting to happen. And I find the more you meet with someone, the more you can kind of like, it becomes more casual and more intentional. But I do feel like you need to have those people. You need to surround yourself with peers. And sometimes it's peers within your sector, and other times it's people who can help coach you who are outside of your sector. So I have a coach that I work with on a regular basis. He's an author in the US. And he's a person whose books I would suggest you look into if you're interested in amazing books. His name's Bob Goff. And I just find it's great to be able to call and, sit down and chat about something that I'm working on that's a struggle, or and he's not in the environmental sector at all. So he brings very different perspectives to the work that I'm doing from a different point of view. And I find that can be really helpful too. So it's really important to have peers that are in your sector. And then it's important to have other leaders out there who you aspire to be like, who have, Sam, that's another way that you and I have connected, because you're not in the environmental sector. You were just this fundraising guru that I was so excited by hearing from you. So I think it is really important that you have those, different folks from different sectors and from within your own peer group that you can rely on and work with.
And managing all of the day-to-day workings, how do you also ensure, Barb, that you're doing this, you're connecting with peers, you're doing all of this work, but at the end of the day your own work gets done? Because I hear from executive directors all the time that say to me, Sam, like, I did this and did this and this, but I do my, like, they're telling me, but I do my work in the evenings and the weekends because I can't actually do my work during the day. So how do you balance all that?
Well, I'm probably an example of how you don't, because I burnt out.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. It was just, I found myself, I have to say, working from home was a challenge for me. So when I started working from home through COVID, I was working more than I had ever worked, because it was so easy just to come back to my computer and deal with something. So I got myself caught in this cycle of, super focused on work, that, I didn't have that sort of separation. So, when I stepped back as executive director, I was giving myself, I wasn't even going to think about work for at least 6 months. I'm going to go on trips, and I'm going to spend, time on myself and have that work-life balance. So when I come back to work, I'm going to have my list of what I'm going to do. I'm going to have how many hours I'm going to work. My priority is my health, my kids, my husband. And, that's what's important to me. So, stepping back, I was really able to kind of look at myself, and I was completely in the fight or flight. Like I could work at such a high level because I was caught in this sort of cycle of like, hyper focus, but it took so much out of me in terms of my health, mentally, physically. So yeah, I guess I can look at it from behind, now as I'm moving forwards, having clear boundaries and, taking that step back. But yeah, when I first left my job, I didn't know what to do. I'd wake up in the morning and I would sit there, and I was lost because I didn't have this work and this computer. I was like, what do I do that's not at my computer? And, it really took a long time to kind of like get into a different routine. It's like, oh, I could walk for an hour and a half today in the forest, so It was just like, I think I had 3 months. It took me 3 months before I was like, oh, okay, this is what it's like to be off. And yeah, so
Yeah.
I had to kind of redesign the whole way I worked. So
Yeah. No,
anyways,
I think
that's
that's
a
really, I
challenge.
appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing that. I think that's really important, Barb. Thank you for that. A great question. A reminder to everybody, if you've got a question for Kristina and Barb, definitely throw it in the Q&A. Chantel Hi has a great question. Hi, Chantel. The question is, how do you maintain these techniques throughout the year? Like when it comes to managing time, managing work throughout the year, I could have written this question, by the way, and Chantel's done a great job. Do you suggest just centering yourself every now and then? It's easy to start the year off strong, kind of like that January resolution. But as things came up, it's easy to derail. So how do you end the year and not lose all those healthy habits? Great question, Chantel. Kristina.
I like to think of it as if we're going in waves. So we're not always trying to keep, like some people say, try to keep every plate spinning, and you're always trying to keep them all spinning. But I prefer to think of it as sometimes I'll have a burst where I'm doing a whole bunch of deadlines and it's crazy and it's unbalanced and I'm working like crazy every day. And then I take the wave goes down or whatever the analogy is. And then I sort of pause, regroup, take a break, take a weekend off, take a week away, whatever it is that I'm doing, and then, come back into it fully. So to me, it's about making sure that, you look at, like, if you're in the middle of wave after wave after wave after wave after wave after wave after wave, which is what Barb was describing before, maybe you transitioned in your executive director role, then it's not sustainable. Like you can't just keep, you can't keep crashing against the shore over and over again like that. At some point, it's going to beat you up, your body, your mental health, and everything. So if you're not coming down and having calm seas for a while, then it's not sustainable. So I think we have to look at the year as a whole and consider, like, when we're pushing, because there are times where you do have to, like, burn yourself out a little bit. Like if there's a huge deadline at midnight, whatever, one of those like 300-page government grants or whatever it is, it's not going to be a pleasant week that week. Like that's just going to be a really crappy week. And hopefully you worked ahead of time to make it, to lead up to it, but it's still going to be a tough week, especially if you're pulling in partners from all over. But don't follow that with another one.
Yeah. And to add to that, just some of the things that I used to do that I know was so wrong is I always had my phone with me and I always checked my emails. So when I was on vacation, I could be out for a walk, I'd get a phone call, I'd always answer it. So learning to turn your ringer off, when you have your time and it's your time, like I think Kristina used to be like, what are you doing? We go away, we're supposed to have like a girls' weekend. And I'm like, I have to deal with this, because, I couldn't let it go. And so why did I even check my email on the weekend where I was supposed to have, time to, refresh myself and whatnot. So that's kind of one thing I'm not doing now, as I get back into work, is really being careful. So when I'm walking at lunch, I'm not checking and, oh, I felt my phone buzz. So who's that? I'm going to stop in the middle of the forest and text back. We can wait half an hour. So
let the deer look over your shoulder. No, that sounds great. Is it hard, do you think, Kristina? Is it still hard for females to lead?
I think so. Like, I know for me, I have 4 kids and, my home life is very busy. And so I think it can be challenging as a woman leader. I mean, I'm super lucky to have a husband who's at home and helps support the household too. So I have that support, but I do feel like it can be very challenging to lead as a woman. There are a lot of competing priorities and, you have to factor in, for some of us, we have to factor in family and other lifestyle considerations. And so, it is challenging to lead.
Barb, any thoughts on that?
Well, I'm sure I have many, but yeah. And I don't know if it was just me, or, and I know a lot of my friends are the same way, but some of us are built, where we want to take care of everything. So we're always thinking about what our kids are going to take for lunch the next day. The dishwasher has to be done. There's no laundry, and so we're just carrying so many different weights on our shoulders. Oh no, it's a snow day. Oh no, the kids are homeschooled now. Plus, trying to lead the organization. So I always felt like I had so much stacked on me, and I have a a fantastic husband who's very supportive, but he just doesn't worry about it. He's like, well, we'll make a sandwich, or who cares? They can wear dirty clothes or, so where I think we just put a lot of pressure on ourselves to kind of do everything right. And we sort of take that on. But for me in our relationship, my husband's job wasn't as flexible because I was in the nonprofit sector. We don't get paid as much. We have flexible hours. Sort of, I was also the one running around picking the kids up when needed, dealing with kind of those situations. So I think it can be really, really challenging.
Yeah. Yeah, for
Depending
sure.
on personality.
Yeah, agreed. Julie's got some great advice here. She says she has a separate work cell phone just for work, so she can turn it off or hand it to a 2IC if she wants to go away or disconnect, which is really a great technique as well to be able to manage all of that. And we only have probably about 10 minutes left, but I really want to ensure we've left people with resources and tips to be able to kind of start this year strong. Kristina, is there something you want to share with people that maybe you're undertaking this year? I'll share mine as well. I'll let you two go, and I'll share something that I'm starting to do this year that I'm hoping is going to make my life a little bit easier. But is there something that's on your plate right now, Kristina, that you've adapted?
Well, I will just reiterate what Nick was saying at the beginning, which is that we're just starting our recruitment process for the capacity building certificate program, which is like a boot camp for running a nonprofit organization. We're going to be having a self-directed version this year. So for people who don't necessarily have the time to come to a bunch of meetings, and then we're hoping if we have a critical mass of students that we'll also have a few that are meeting-based events as well. But that was, obviously I developed that program, so I don't want to be like it was an instrumental program that I developed, but
Yeah.
I have heard a lot of good feedback from other folks saying that it was like a really practical tools for all the areas around. And that's really what through the Capacity Building Institute we've tried to do, is have very practical ways. And there are just like hundreds of free resources that we include, and it's a lifetime access to those resources. So it's really not about, it's really about like giving leaders in the environmental sector the skills and tools that also they can grow with over time. So what you take in year one might be different than what you need 5 years later. And so I really encourage anyone who hasn't been part of that program to check it out, to reach out to Hannah, the operations manager at CBI, and whatever, resources are posted on our website about that if you haven't. And then, for me, just trying to get back into reading on a regular basis, both kinds of reading, the reading for fun. In fact, I have a book about burnout that I've been not reading for like 2 or 3 weeks, because I'm like, I don't want to start reading this. I'm worried it's going to make me feel, but yes, I think there will be some useful tools that I'll learn from that. And then I also have some fun reading. Like I haven't actually sat down to read a fun novel. I think I bought myself like 5 Christmassy themed novels over the holidays, and I didn't read a single one. So I need to get back into just fun reading that just shuts off, that doesn't think about. And I love a good board game. So for me, having time where I can disconnect and just play something fun with family, with friends. Those are the kinds of things I'm going to try to do more of, and take a few more wonderful hot baths, because that is a way like that really, that's just part of my joy. I think that's a little bit more burnout and self-care kind of stuff that I'm doing, but I think those are very connected to leadership. So those are some of the things I'm going to do this year.
Wonderful. Barb, what's on your list?
We're probably in a little bit of the same boat with Kristina and I talking about, self-care, but self-care is number one on my list. I'm still not done my journey of getting back into shape. I've joined badminton and, other sports, and, trying to get back in, more hiking, and, possibly getting back into mountain biking, and sort of getting my body back. And then I find as I'm doing more exercise, then, mentally I am, so much stronger. But just to jump on what you're saying, Kristina, about the capacity building program, I have taken courses, so many different programs over the last 20 years, including my master's, but I mean, nothing is close to, the program in terms of, having the resources and information, exactly what you need to know to be a leader in the environmental sector. So had I have taken that program 20 years ago, I wouldn't have stumbled and fumbled and learned the hard way, as executive director. So, when I became executive director. So it's, I do encourage people to check it out.
For sure, absolutely. One of the things that I've been really struggling with over the years is anything to do with accounting. So it just panics me. I don't know what it is. It just is something that I've always struggled with. So this year, what I've done is set up a time to just work on every single month, work on what I need to do financially, and I've got somebody helping me. And I think putting your hand up and saying, "This is not my strength. I need some help," I think is pretty cool. So I've done that for the accounting side, because whenever sort of that time, because my fiscal for my business is another time of year, and it just gave me a heart attack every time. And then, but when I sat down to do it, it was fine. But it was almost the lead up to it was more than what I actually was doing. So I'm trying to take the mystery out of accounting, dun, 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 and just make that a little bit more. When it comes to like finances for nonprofit, no problem. But my own stuff, I don't know why. That makes me nervous. So I put a focus this year on financial literacy for myself. So I think, you know, the whole point of me sharing that really is the things that we don't feel strongest in, it's okay to ask for help.
Yeah, and I think it's important that we be honest with ourselves about where the areas are that we're struggling. Like, you know, for some people, the finances of an organization is an area where they are struggling with, like how to build out a budget, how to read the financial statements at a board meeting or whatever it is. And so if that is a struggle for you, in the context of your nonprofit you're running, or being part of or volunteering for, like, don't just kind of like, you know, not say anything and not really like look at the document. If you're not understanding what you're seeing, you know, seek out some help, you know, to do that. There's lots of great tools and resources out there for that specifically, and for other areas as well, whether it's governance, whether it's you know, other areas in your life or in your work life that you're struggling with. I think being honest about those areas are what's the first step to help strengthening them.
No, absolutely. 100%. One of our friends today has said, they've been reading for fun before bed, new nighttime routine instead of doom scrolling. So how do we, I know Barb, you talked about, you know, now you're trying to put your phone away and all that stuff, but boy, oh boy, it can be so tempting. And, you know, I've been in a situation where I looked down and I thought, where did 45 minutes go? I think we're all sort of, you know, I've had that happen, but how do you manage all that, Barb?
Yeah, I actually kind of had to check out because I was getting myself into really negative thought patterns, you know,
Mm.
just worried about the world, about people, about, you know, my kids' future. You know, I'm working in the environmental sector and I'm like, things aren't getting better. You know, climate change and wars, and, you know, just I've had to take sort of a bit of a break from news and, you know, watching and getting on to things that are just gonna kind of get me really anxious. So I've been reading a lot of books just for fun. I have
Yeah.
audiobooks I put in my ears and I go off hiking to the forest and kind of walking around. So I've had to take a break. You know, from kind of scrolling and watching the news and things like that. I mean, I still, you know, check in to make sure, you know, the world's not completely in chaos around me. But yeah, I found it was really getting to me. I found that news, like, there used to be happy stories in the news to go with something that happened, and you don't see that anymore. Like, you know, if my kids watch the news with me, I'm like, how can they feel positive about the future? So
It's a lot. It's a
um,
lot. And I think we, you know,
yeah.
we sort of touched about it on a few times today, Kristina, but just that, you know, that whole vulnerability too, to sort of put your hand up and say, you know what, I'm not going to scroll like that anymore, or my weakness is finance, or whatever it is. Vulnerability, Brene Brown talks about this. I mean, that's what she talks about. The vulnerability of sort of being open about some of that stuff. It's so key in leadership. That wasn't talked about a decade ago.
Yeah, and I think having that vulnerability within your team, you know, is really important too. Being able to feel like you can be honest with each other about things you're working on, or things that you're going through, bringing them to the table. So I think that that's a change for us. As you know, we're trying to really emphasize doing regular check-ins at each of our meetings so that we kind of get a bit more personal with getting to know each other and what we're up to. And, you know, going back to the phone thing, you know, I used to be able to turn my phone off for the whole weekend and leave it in my glove box when I would go to the cottage and not have my phone the whole time. And I stopped doing that this last year or two. And I've noticed like I haven't enjoyed being out there as much. And I think that's partly why, because I'm not disconnecting. And I know for me, I don't take my phone into the bedroom at night at all. Like it doesn't, it's charged in the living room. It does not come in my bedroom at night. So that's huge for me too, because I don't want the last thing I do to be looking at my phone and then the first thing I do in the morning to be checking my text. So yeah, so those are just little practices, but that's, you know, my husband would say I'm already on my phone too much. So
yeah. And it's, you know, it's balancing things for loved ones as well, for sure. I know we've got a very busy year ahead of us, lots of different topics. I think starting off with you two today was the perfect way to start 2024, talking about leadership. We've given some resources in the chat as well. And once again, I mean, you pointed out, Kristina, wonderful programs within Capacity Building Institute to kickstart someone's year as well. Barb, thank you so much for being here and for sharing. And it's always great to get connected with you.
yeah, we'll have to do this
Thank
again sometime, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I can actually picture us like actually just doing this over coffee. So,
Yeah.
which is always good in person as
We
well.
should book it.
Yeah, absolutely. And always appreciate everybody that joins us. I mean, this is why we do these things, to get connected. And we often hear from people as well that found some tidbits and some value in what we've shared today. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you in February. I can't wait. We're going to be talking all about networking in February. Stay warm, everyone. I'm Sam Laprade. This is the Capacity Building Institute, and we look forward to seeing you for the whole year.